Michigan has a framework, a legal framework that is, around divorce and the marital home. And most people do not understand it. And that lack of clarity is where mistakes get made. The house is typically the largest asset in a divorce. And it's also the most emotionally charged. So when financial structure and personal history, when they collide, decisions can get rushed or they can be made without full information. So what I want to do is slow it down and talk about what happens to the house during a divorce in the state of Michigan. So here's how Michigan actually handles a marital home and what you need to know and understand before everything gets finalized in your divorce. So here's the legal foundation. Michigan is not automatically a 50-50 state. We follow what's called an equitable distribution. That means marital property is divided fairly, not necessarily equally. And fair, it doesn't always mean equal. Here's what courts may consider during a divorce: the length of a marriage, each spouse's earning capacity, financial contributions. There could also be non-financial contributions, such as raising children, health and age. How about future financial needs? If the home was purchased during the marriage, it typically is considered marital property, even if only one of the spouses has their name on the deed, and if only one spouse is on the mortgage. If marital income was used to pay down the mortgage, build equity, or make any type of improvements during the marriage, that equity is generally part of the marital estate. If a home was owned prior to the marriage, inherited, or gifted, the classification may differ. However, appreciation during the marriage can still be a part of the discussion. Please keep in mind, this is an educational video. It's based on guidance on Michigan real estate practice. It's not legal advice. Every divorce is unique, and you need to consult a qualified Michigan divorce attorney for your specific situation. So that was the legal structure. Now let's take a look at 3 ways this usually gets resolved in the state of Michigan. Number 1, sell the home and divide the equity. For many couples, this is the cleanest financial separation. The home gets listed, it gets priced strategically, it sells, the proceeds are divided according to the divorce agreement. But strategy matters here. In Royal Oak, certain price ranges generate significantly more buyer activity than others. If a property is positioned outside of those demand bands, leverage can actually shift. In Birmingham, higher property values and higher property tax exposure make pricing and negotiation structure even more critical. So here's what you need to review: recent comparable sales, current competition, average days on the market, buyer demand specific to your particular neighborhood. So this is not about just listing it quickly. This is about protecting your equity. Here's something really important. Divorce sales require discretion. That reason for selling is not required to be publicly disclosed. Buyer agents and buyers, they might ask why a property is being sold, but that information is not a legal requirement, and in many cases, it's not even relevant to the transaction itself. Maintaining privacy during negotiations protects leverage, especially when the focus remains on the property, its value, and market conditions, rather than personal circumstances. The negotiation, it stays right where it belongs. Protecting net proceeds is crucial because in many cases, those net proceeds determine where one of the spouses will go next. This is where hiring an advocate matters. An advocate protects equity, privacy, and the structure of communication throughout the entire transaction, especially in situations where both sellers may not even be speaking to each other. Divorce transactions must be handled with clarity, professionalism, and the utmost care from start to finish. In some cases, one spouse may need their share of the net proceeds to purchase their next home. So that requires coordination of timing, access of funds, and sometimes contingent purchase strategies, which is a separate conversation that we'll break down in another segment. Number 2, One spouse keeps the home. This option almost feels like stability, especially when there's children involved, but it requires structure. That spouse keeping the home typically needs to refinance into their own name. That's going to mean qualifying independently. Income, debt to income ratios, credit, and appraisal, they all matter. The mortgage payment alone is not the full picture. You need to factor in property taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance reserves, future repairs. Those are all very important expenses. In Michigan, property tax implications can shift depending on home ownership transfers. That needs to be reviewed before agreements are finalized. If refinancing timelines written into the divorce agreement do not align with our lender reality, complications can arise. Keeping the home can provide community, but it must be sustainable. If it creates ongoing financial pressure, that pressure compounds. Clarity protects you. Number 3, a delayed sale or a temporary arrangement. Sometimes the agreement is to delay selling the marital home. And this may happen if children are finishing up a school year, or if market timing is being evaluated, or if refinancing requires additional timing. If that's the plan, the agreement must be clearly outlined. Who pays the mortgage? Who pays the property taxes? Who's covering the maintenance and the repairs? How major expenses are going to be divided? What triggers the eventual sale? That's really important. What happens if payments are missed? Ambiguity creates conflict later. Specific arrangements prevent it. Temporary arrangements can work, but only when structured properly. When costly mistakes happen, this is a really important section. Costly mistakes can happen. The biggest time drain is divorce, real estate, in confusion. What does that mean? Too many voices, too little structure. Additional costly mistakes include allowing personal circumstances to influence negotiation positioning, accepting early offers out of urgency rather than reviewing full market exposure, failing to coordinate communication when both spouses are not aligned, overlooking how tone and process are handled during showings, negotiations, and closing. Divorce transactions, they are sensitive financial events. They require structure, being neutral, and utmost respect. When handled properly, the focus remains on the property outcome and not managing avoidable conflict. When you have accurate valuation, clear refinance understanding, tax awareness, local market insight, the emotional intensity lowers. You can think clearly. So let's talk about taxes and timing. Timing affects outcome. Primary residence capital gains exemptions may apply. This is important, but timing relative to divorce finalization, that matters. Filing status changes may affect deductions. Mortgage interest considerations may shift depending on ownership structure. Property tax implications may apply if ownership transfers. These factors need to be reviewed before your divorce agreements are finalized. Listen, sequence matters. The house decision does not need to be rushed. It needs to be structured. When you understand the legal framework, your financial numbers, your local market, and your timeline, the decision becomes much more strategic instead of reactive. That's where stability begins. You protect your equity, and when stability is created, especially during divorce, better outcomes will happen.